Hi, welcome back to my studio. I'm Gina and I am a creator and maker of doll houses and miniatures, mainly in 1/12 and 1/24 scale. So if you're new here, welcome. And if you have returned here, welcome back. So I had started this week off in a slightly different direction. I had thought that I would be doing the bedroom in the 70s mansion. It's a Victorian styled mansion that I'm doing a renovation of the 1970s era. So the interior of the build is going to be very much in the 1970s, but the exterior is sort of a rundown Victorian mansion. Also, it's a little bit unexpected, so from the outside you wouldn't be expecting to have that type of interior. So it's kind of a very, very fun project. I'd already put some of the flooring in there and it was basically ready to go. And I designed a plan, but then I quickly realized that my time was going to be quite short this week, and trying to get that created and edited and all those fun things of getting a video out there was really not going to happen. So I decided to change my approach this week a little bit and work on the living room. Now the reason why I've done that is because I'd already started on creating the lounge suite. So I started on that maybe a couple of months ago, got to a point and I lost interest in it, which happens, right? It does happen. So I just put it aside, I didn't get rid of it, and so I picked that back up and finished that off. But I'm actually really pleased with how this has turned out. It's actually turned out far better than what I had anticipated, which is always a good thing. And if you're familiar with some of my other videos and some of the stories, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes the ideas that I have in my head don't always come out into the project itself. So I'm really stoked with how this one's turned out. It's not finished, but I've got this far over a weekend and I really hope that you enjoy the process. So let's get started. To begin with, I'm going to be bringing out my inspiration magazine. I've already created a bit of a plan, and I've also created a bit of a test piece actually, just to make sure that the design and the size was right. So I'm using a mix of foam board and mat board to create the frame, with the foam board at the bottom, which adds a bit more structure. And then I'm just going to work my way around, just covering all the sides of the foam board with mat board. And this is actually going to create the structure or the frame of the chair. For the back of the chair, I'm going to cover some more mat board in fabric, and I'm using this mid-brown coloured cotton fabric as it's nice and thin, and as I wrap it around I'm trying to remove as much bulk as possible. So to create a semi-faux wood grain effect on the actual chair itself, I'm going to use one coat of brown paint, and I'm going to sort of drag it in one direction over the chair to give it the look that it's got wood grain on it, and just allowing a little bit of that white to come through. So I'm not actually going to spend too much time trying to make sure that it's all one colour. I'm quite happy with it being a little bit kind of streaky, I guess. So once that's all done and set aside and dried, I can move on to creating the cushions for the chair. So I'm just using some wadding or batting. This is sort of a cotton batting, and just using that, and just all I'm doing here is doubling it over and then using the same technique that I did for covering the mat board. I'm going to use the same technique and cover these little cushions as well, and just folding the fabric over and then cutting away as much bulk as possible until I've got them all covered. So now I can move on to gluing the backs into the chair. So this is the mat board that I covered in the fabric before, and now that the chair is all dry, I can glue that into place, which creates the backing of the chair, which is quite solid. So to create all of the button details in the actual chair itself, all I'm doing here is creating a couple of stitches through the wadding, the fabric, and in this particular place is also going through a bit of glue as well, so it takes a little bit of effort to get that needle through. So I'm just placing a couple of stitches in where the buttons are and just pulling that reasonably tight, not too tight. It's going to be enough to create the illusion of the button effect. And this is this piece of cushion is going to be the seat as well as the back of the chair. So I'll put 5 faux buttons in the back and 5 in the seat as well. So I'm just going to repeat that process for all of the other cushions as well, and then once they're all done I can fit them into place and just make sure I'm happy with the fit, and then glue it into place as well. So to create the arms, I'm just going to create a couple of circles just by folding the fabric in half and then half again. And this is going to create the rests of all of the chairs and sofa. And just using that same bump fabric, so I've just got one layer in here. I'm just cutting some little notches around the outside of the fabric, putting a bit of glue into place, and then basically just pulling in the sides of the fabric just to cover it ever so slightly. Just by putting the nicks in the fabric allows to remove some of the bulk, because otherwise the fabric here is just sitting on top of each other rather than folded on top of each other, if that makes any sense. Anyways, it's a bit of a repeatable process, so I'm going to do that for all of the different arms. We've got our chief supervisor on duty, which is cool. And then basically following the same process as I did for the cushions, and just putting 2 buttonholes or buttons on each side of the chair. So this round is going to go over the arm of the chair, and it's going to create the inside cushion as well as the outside cushion. So each one of these will get 4 buttons on each one, and then you can kind of see how it's all going to fit together. So once I'm happy with that, just going to add a little bit of glue and put those into place. One of the things that I wanted to do with these chairs was to create a bit of a faux leather type of look. So I've gone ahead and I've given it a coat of Mod Podge, and now I've just mixed up a mid-tone brown, just with a bit of brown paint, the paint that I always use, with a little bit of white, just to kind of tone it down a little bit. So I'm just going to go over all of the fabric just to give it this more warmer brown tone. And then I'm going to go back in with a slight little bit of mix of black, and I'm going to highlight all of the button details, and just with a little fine brush, just making sure I can get in there and adding some of the creases, and then just adding a little bit more shadow into where the creases of the fabric would be, just with a little bit more brown and black paint mix. And I sort of go over this until I'm pretty happy with the overall look, and then to finish it off, I'll go back through and add another layer of Mod Podge over the top, just to kind of give it quite a glossy overall look. And once these all finished, I'm pretty happy with how they've turned out. So just using a bit of matte board again, I'm just cutting out some sort of pretty basic shapes to create the coffee table, as well as some side tables, which is basically going to follow exactly the same process. So I'm just using some sort of cut out pieces of the matte board, and as I sort of square them off in the corner, that's actually going to create the legs. And it's a very sort of 70s inspired design, which is quite simple. And then once I'm happy with that, all I'm going to do is create the same type of paint effect although this one I'm going to add just a little bit darker. And I'm going to create sort of a tile effect on the top. So a lot of sort of 70s tables or occasional tables would have a mix of wood and tiles, and just to kind of create an interesting aesthetic. So I'm going to give that a go as well and create sort of a tiled effect on the top. So this is just sort of a terracotta, very sort of red terracotta type of look. It's actually the same type of tile that I've used in the entranceway, and I'm just going to give that one a go. So for this room, I also wanted to create a hanging fireplace, and I wanted to keep the design pretty simple. I've used a lid from a spice container for the bottom, and then just a cardboard tube which is already bent round for the actual cone shape. And I've just shaped that to match the aesthetic that I'm looking for. And once I'm pretty happy with that, I'm going to use some wood glue to actually coat the paper. So I've used a plastic straw. I've used a cardboard straw. It's a smoothie straw, so it's quite a bit more wider. But by using the wood glue, it's going to give me a slightly smoother finish, as well as a kind of a metal look as well, because so this is sort of a more of an enameled look. And then I'm going to use this mustard yellow, very 70s mustard yellow for the outside, and then I'm just going to paint the inside black, and that's basically it. And we've got our cheap supervisor back, and then I'm going to create a couple of curtains using a sort of a very similar process that I've used in the past. So this is a mixture of water and PVA glue, and then basically I cut the fabric basically to 2 or 3 times the width that I need, and then as the sort of dosed in water, as they've sort of been drenched in water, I'm just going to manipulate them into a shape that I'm pretty happy with and let them dry. So once they're dry, then I can actually start adding them into the project. And to do that, I just wanted to add a couple of top architraves, because I'm going to have these curtains as sort of sitting open. Then I'm going to trim them to length and then simply just glue them into place. I've used a little wood dowel that I've just painted in brown as well, as a sort of semi curtain rod type of fixture as well, just to kind of give it a bit more of a finished look. So yeah, and once they're all in place, I'm pretty happy with that. So for the carpet in this room, I'm just using an old towel, which actually ended up by being pretty spot on for colour wise. And then I can just start adding in the furniture and the tables, as well as the fireplace. Now the fireplace, I'm just going to be sitting on the ground, but eventually that will be hanging from the ceiling. So it will be a hanging fireplace. So there you go, it's all finished. I'm really pleased with how it's all turned out, especially the fireplace. I had no idea what I was doing when I launched into that and thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't come together. But actually, I'm really pleased with how it's turned out. I've just got a little grate to make and maybe some faux logs or something in there just to kind of add a little bit more detail. I'm really stoked with the leather effect that I've got onto the fabric. Still got the sunroom to create, so I'll end up by doing that. So there's a few finishing touches that need to happen. I've got a picture that I want to put up as well, which you'll see in the final shots, which is just sitting on the floor. It would be amiss of me if I didn't self-promote the channel, so if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing that. Turn on that bell notification so that you get notified when the next video goes up. And also, if you like this video and you've come this far, please hit that like button. It really does help the channel, and it helps get the videos out there to a much wider audience. So I really appreciate that. So yeah, let's have a look at the final result. Actually, I'm just going to stop there. When I put this room together, I actually didn't like the red with the green. The wallpaper's okay because it's got enough pattern on it, but I just felt that it was very Christmas tree inspired, and it was, the more I looked at it, the more it was annoying me. So I have created a new patterned tile effect. I've just grabbed this off a stock file and sized it on my printer to be the right size for these little tables or coffee table and the 2 side tables. And this is a much better effect. So once they were glued into place and dried, I'm just going to put a coat of Mod Podge over the top just to kind of give it a semi-gloss effect. And this fits much better into the room. So yeah, let's just finish this off and let's take a look at the final result.